Ready to shine inside out? Welcome to Polished Beauty Podcast, where ambition meets empowerment. We talk business, beauty, brain, body. I am your host, Dr. Daisy Ayim, triple board certified cosmetic surgeon and OBGYN. Let's get polished. Oh my gosh, Hey everyone, this episode is really personal in literally real time because we're going to talk about fatigue, decision fatigue. If you've not heard that word before, I'm going to help you coin it and apply it to your life, or at least see how it is part of your life, because a lot has transpired with me personally that I had to sit here and record this podcast. Women or men, ambitious women, they are juggling a lot, okay? You're talking about your business, family, beauty, wellness, work. There's so much to put together on your plate. Even the strongest of minds get tired and they're not immune to fatigue. And this fatigue can mask itself sometimes when you overload and you don't realize that you've overloaded. So in this episode, I'm going to dive into the neuroscience of what happens to mental depletion and also offer practical guides and science-backed tools. And all of this is to help you reclaim your time, your energy. And I'm just going to use my personal story that happened to me this past few days. I was invited to a conference to be a speaker and also to bring my podcast, to be part of the media team. And I was told there was going to be about 30 or so media outlets there to make this a very worthwhile trip for me. This usually is a month that I don't like to do conference or speaking engagement because I have a daughter and usually we're transitioning going to school. So a lot happens in August. So I just use it as a time to not vacation, do anything, and just make it truly family. But with this particular opportunity, and you guys know I have my Polished Beauty podcast, and I thought this is a good idea. Let me take this podcast to the road, mingle with other media outlet, get to interview some guests and also be on some other shows. And so it seemed like a win-win, at least in theory. That's what was presented to me. It was going to be 3 days. And being the planner that I am, I was told, I can come the day before to set up my studio or the area that we're going to do the podcast. I arrive a day before the conference begins, and to my surprise, all the items that I had ordered to have available for the set was not there. Well, it was at the conference hall, but it wasn't at the location for the podcast. And it was in this huge crate, so there was no one there to bring up. Granted, I have a media team that I told to meet me the same day. Make a long story short, I wasted my Thursday, which was the day I arrived to set up. I wasn't able to arrive because the conference organizer did not do what they were supposed to, which is have all my items ready at the particular room to set up the podcast. So that was a day wasted. The next day, which is the big day of the conference, so I spent my morning trying to set up, and obviously it just did not flow as it should. The backdrop was not there. There were things missing, and it just became very chaotic and very clear that it was not an organized conference, and it overpromised and it was under delivering. And overall, it just was becoming very clear that in some ways I had sacrificed a lot by deviating from my usual to accept this obligation. And here I am, it's not going as it should. And I was just being very calm, but it was draining and it was disappointing because that was not what I had intended for that weekend. So it inspired me to have this episode because the couple of nuggets that I'm going to share as far as what happens when someone requires your time and you compromise your schedule and your routine to offer your time, and your time is not valued and it seems like it's underscored or not appreciated for what it is. If you've ever felt like you are going all day and about 3 p.m. your brain just shuts down, you are not alone. This is a real thing. This is something that is happening to a lot of people. I mean, you may have a long list of things to do and your brain is screaming like it, but you just can't get to it, or whatever the case is, you're not lazy. There's a neuroscience to explain that, and that is called decision fatigue. We make a lot of decisions every day, and decision fatigue is the silent drain on mental energy affecting high performing women or individuals. So that phenomenal decision fatigue can mask in so many ways that you are not even thinking that that's what's happening to you. So decision fatigue is a real thing. The definition of it is a psychological phenomenon where the brain's ability to make decisions become impaired after a long session of decision making. This is where our brain has very limited capacity each day. At some point, our brain is just going to shut down because did you know in a 24-hour period in a day, your brain makes about 35,000 decisions a day? That is a lot. I mean, you're deciding what to wear in the morning, what to eat, whether to drop the kids off, whether to go to work, whether to say hello to your colleagues, how to manage your staff, how to manage your colleagues, or you're making a decision what to eat for lunch, or what time do you want to get up. It's constantly, your brain is constantly making decisions, and that can cause brain fatigue. So it's not something to think that it's made up, like, oh, I'm just tired, I can't think. No, there's actually a neuroscience behind it. Our prefrontal cortex is responsible for logic, planning, impulse control. It's basically our it center, okay? And if it's overworked, the brain will shift into default mode, meaning that it will just shift into shortcuts, having emotional outbursts, or procrastinating and not really trying to make a decision. I would say this during this conference, I felt overwhelmed. And I don't usually get overwhelmed. Why? As a surgeon, for example, if I'm operating as a complex case, my brain goes into this decision making because I know that I have to get this case done, and I zero in and I focus and I accomplish the task. If I'm delivering babies, for example, I'm focused on that task. If I'm doing a hysterectomy, I'm focused on that task. Regardless the complexity of it, I know and I have that confidence that the task will be achieved and completed. When I was in this conference and nothing was going as planned, and it really appeared as if they were making the schedule as it was going. And I have never experienced something like this. I have been to countless conferences and speaking events, and usually there's a program and itinerary, and everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do. There may be some, deviations along the way, but they're very small, nothing that's really heavy. But in this moment, everything was being decided and coordinated at the moment. I had no control over that moment. And it wasn't that I was a control person. It's just that there was no organization. There was a lack of focus. It was like so many questions like, what is this? And my brain was fatigued because it was thinking so much about how to mitigate a disaster. And it was completely out of my hands. It's not like a complex surgery where I'm like, okay, this is difficult, but I know I can control it because it's in my hands. I'm the one that decide. In this particular situation, it was out of my hand and it needed to be fixed. I did something that I've never done before. When it comes to conferences or obligation, I knew immediately I had to remove myself from that situation. I was getting headaches, and I don't usually get headache, but it was just the amount of disorganization and just high octane in so many directions that my brain literally became fatigued. And the sign of fatigue for me was headache. And I knew I had to remove myself from that environment to resolve the situation. But how do I do it? I have this podcast booth that I'm supposed to be one of the media stations. And fun fact, only 2 media stations showed up. And I was one of the 2 out of the 30. And it was just like, I have to go. Anyway, going back to decision fatigue, there are so many things that can affect you. And sometimes, like I mentioned, you're going through this, you don't realize that that's what it is. I knew I was in it and I knew how to resolve it. And that inspired me to create this podcast today. So, how to reclaim your mental bandwidth if you find yourself in this predicament in your life or any situation where you just need to like unwind and go back to square one. The first thing is ritualize your routine. I believe in automated decisions or automated rituals. So, for example, you can do meal prep. It doesn't have to be to the science where you have every single day. You can just cook in bulk and then you just have leftovers as you eat throughout the week. Okay. Or you can do an actual meal prep where you have every single day. You can kind of go to your wardrobe and say, okay, I'm going to pick out my outfits for the week. That way, every morning you're not like stressing on what to wear. That's one way to ritualize your routine. You can have certain days to work out. Say, okay, I'm going to work out every other day instead of just leaving workout to I want to do it 4 times a week, but you don't have a routine of which 4 days of the week to do. So you can commit yourself. That allows you to have a ritual. Okay. Use weekly planners, use capsule closets, whatever it takes to just give yourself some sort of organizational flow. Okay. The second thing is set digital boundaries. What does that mean? Well, block of time to have no decision. Like, you just, even if it's for an hour, just say, you know what, I'm going to let my mind idle for an hour, or I'm not going to answer my phone for an hour, not going to respond to a text and email, whatever it is, but just have that decision hour that is blocked off to protect you. Okay. Or do batch communication. You can say, all right, for the next 3 hours, I'm going to check emails, I'm going to respond to texts, I'm going to do all the communication I need to do, and then shut off. So you have that block. Another way to reclaim your mental bandwidth is to use a 2-minute rule. And what that is just if it takes less than 2 minutes to do it, just go ahead and do it. So if you have a decision to make or a task to do, and it's not going to take you that long, just go ahead and do it and get it out of the way. So that's the 2-minute rule. Okay. It helps not store a lot of information into your brain when you do that. Also, know exactly what requires brain power. So if you have many decisions to make, you can kind of prioritize like what is going to require me more time to think and what is going to require less time, and prioritize it so you're not overwhelmed, and you can go for the low hanging fruit decisions, something that's just easy, quick, which falls back to that 2-minute rule. And never be afraid to delegate, defer, or ask for help. It's really important. If you can delegate a task or a decision, do it. If you can defer it and come back to it later, do it. I often utilize deferment a lot because with running a business, managing staff, managing my daughter, managing my life, or just managing all the different commitment and projects that I've signed up with, it becomes really hard. So sometimes I defer things to like, okay, this is a September problem, I'm going to manage it in September. Or this is an August problem, I'm going to manage it in August. And this takes me back to the beginning when I said that August for me is such an important month just because that's when my daughter is transitioning in school. And I've been doing this since she's kindergarten. So I really don't like to have vacations or anything major in the month of August because I know that I need that time, partly because of that transition. That was probably my first mistake, was I deviated from my ritual. I accepted to go to this conference, encroach into August when I should have not. But because the value of it was presented to me, or I should say, I saw the value in it based on the presentation, I thought, let me go and be part of this. And quite honestly, guys, it was just a disaster. And I should have just politely declined. Hindsight is 2020. The thing you can do is feed your brain. What does that mean? Eat protein. It sounds very cliche. Increase your omega-3. Okay. Hydration. All those things are very helpful in helping you reclaim your time and set your boundaries to avoid decision fatigue. Also, schedule mental white space. What does that mean? Basically, just give yourself a block time to just be idle, not thinking, not processing, not engaging in anything that requires you to use your brain cells or your brain power. So just leave it. You can do that. And that is very helpful. And then the last one, I really think this is one that most people don't take good advantage of, and that is protecting your mornings. If you're not a morning person, you're going to say, oh, I'm an evening person. But really, mornings is a great time to make decisions because that's when you're at your highest, you're most alert, you're not tired. So it's a good time to make decisions. So if you are able to protect your time and give yourself some time in the morning to just be still and make some decisions, that would be really good. Not everyone have the luxury, obviously. If you have children and other obligations or you work night shifts, that may not be for you. But in general, mornings is a good time. And make this your sacred non-negotiable, meaning that nothing interferes during it. For the longest time, I was waking up at 5 a.m. and I start working out from 6 to 7. And then I will sit in the sauna from 7 to 7:30, shower, get ready, and be in the office by 8:30. And it worked really well. Then I had some obligations that came and took away that time from me. I still try to do my mornings now. I find myself waking up even earlier to do some tasks. But mornings is really a sacred time that if you can carve it out for you, you're going to accomplish so much and you're not going to have as much decision fatigue. Going back to my predicament, the way I had to reclaim my time, because it was a 2.5 day, 3 day conference. The pre-conference, I told you what happened. The first day of the conference, disaster. The second day of the conference, it was not any better. Again, there was no structure, no organization, and my headaches actually improved. But then it came later when I saw that things weren't flowing. I made the decision to leave. And I am several states away, and I have one more day of this conference, but I knew my mental fatigue had maxed out. There was no room, and I was not going to continue at that pace. So literally, I called the airlines and I asked for the first flight out in the morning, and I was on standby and I took my chances. At 5 a.m., I showed up at the airport. Fortunately, there was a seat available and I was able to book the flight and come back to my home base. During the flight, I was just thinking about what had occurred. And I was just like, what is this? There's something about preparation and poor planning and affecting people's time when time is the greatest gift you can give someone. And then to have your time not valued and not utilized well, it's the ultimate no in my book. Because if I take my time to be present for you, the least you can do is value the time, because we're in a society in a current moment where everyone is busy, everyone is multitasking, or people just don't have time for anyone. So if someone gives you their time, you have to really be so appreciative and not to take it for granted. And for me, that's an ultimate no in my book. When my time is devalued, I immediately remove myself. And that's what I did to mitigate the situation. It goes without saying that always try to stick to what you know works for you. Sometimes you make compromises and they are good, and other times you make compromises and it feels like you shouldn't have. I tell you, decision fatigue. I am experiencing it right now just from it. And I said this particular episode is a real time of what is happening in my life. I will not give you too much detail besides an event or conference, but I'm sitting here shaking my head off like, I cannot believe this. Like, wow. All right. So, a polished life isn't about doing more because you may experience decision fatigue. It's all about deciding with power and protecting your bandwidth. You have to empower yourself and be comfortable protecting your bandwidth because you will be stretched. Okay. I want you to evaluate 3 areas of your life that you can simplify today. Like, what are some areas in your life that's causing decision fatigue? And then I want you to apply those steps or those examples or all the examples I've just stated and see how that just changed for you miraculously. And I also want you to practice or share your favorite brain saving hacks with me, in the comment, tag me at Polished Beauty Podcast. I want to hear it because what occurred to me this past few days at a conference, I was just like, I'm done. I have to leave. Didn't care that there was still another day left the conference because it was clear to me they didn't care enough to value my time or value all the others that were there, because was not a singular issue. It was a multi-direction issue. I just said I have to come home. And you know what? The minute I arrived home, took a shower, guess what? My headache went away. So be empowered from this episode, and I hope it resonate with you. As always, please leave a comment, DM me, email the practice if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for listening. Video recording of this episode will be featured on our YouTube channel, Dr. Daisy Ayim. We are also found on Instagram at Polished Beauty Podcast or at Dr. Daisy Ayim. Remember, new episodes drop every Wednesday, so stay tuned. Please like, share, follow.